Hello everyone, back to coding and working on the open source version of 3D Internet so everybody can host a piece of it and we'll create the world's largest game. Okay, so I've been going through different classes. I just finished out creating all the different functions for the different classes, and these are called by the iframes pages. So now I'm going through the iframes pages, telling them which ones to use, and finishing out converting the pages. So before it was all using stored procedures, and now they're using inline code. So of course now I'm going through and making sure that bring the stored procedure to the local code, include any logic that the stored procedure was pulling off, and getting it all ready to go. So, and at the same time, I'm also globalizing the code so that basically it globalizes so that your variables, your domain name, and users and different things like this are based on your particular instance and not mine. So that'll do it. Let's see. Going through right now, I'm working on the different iframes. These are what we use behind the animated scene to actually record the data back to the database and draw data from the database while the actual scene page is live and active. We're using canvas elements for that. We use WebGL using the Babylon gaming engine. Okay, with that said, that page is already done. Let's see, we've got the building one, and I've got this one started. Let's see, did I do everything I need? Require building. Make sure that each one of these are calling the building object. And I'm trapping if there's any errors. Okay, that one looks good. Just going through them. Yes, save that. Community. I guess I did more than I thought on these. Okay, we're looking good on that. Community's done. And it calls the various objects. Each one of them are using the community class. And it only happens on the post back because that's the only time we're actually hitting the database is when we're posting back. So there's no reason to load them any sooner than that. Also helps the page load faster when it is a raw page that isn't being used yet. So, okay, community grids. Here we go. Here's one that I haven't done yet. So taking on the same pattern of the pages I've already done, we're including this iframe class. That's going to consume a lot of the stuff we were doing before. So we don't need the session start anymore. It's wrapped up in there. It also has that. Let's see. Next, we're going to move this over to the post area where we load the class, and we're going to call the class okay. That brings that in when we need it. Here we're also going to do just for page view tracking. We hit Google Analytics. If you set up the config file, if you set the ID in the config file, then it'll automatically do Google Analytics. That's what's working on your website. The different web pages that are being called in the background will all get there, get recorded. Okay, and am I using, let's see, this is the connecting grids class. Yes, we do use thing, building, and community. Do we read them in? No, we're not reading them in here. Okay, just double checking, making sure I'm not doing any calls. I did a try loop. I want to make sure that I'm catching it and bringing it back to the class if there's anything we need to catch. So we do that there. And this page is connecting grids. Connecting grids are the parts that let us put it tells us where, how, and orientation of buildings and things that we put inside of communities or things inside of other buildings. So when we do these, we want to make sure we're updating the connecting grid. See, we have save connecting grid here. I need to call that within this class now. And we call deleted connecting grids from there. And that should do it for that. Q. Q welcome. Okay, sure. I'll go with that. Typo, they put the Q next to the W, so if it was a different letter, you'd have seen that letter instead. Okay, that takes care of that class. Since I've already done all the work on creating the class for iframe, just to show you, what I'm actually doing here is I set a certain number of variables. I also see if the session is used so that it can log on the page or not. That way we can dynamically bring open the page and send it to a loading page just so that it doesn't show something if they're not logged in. We'll do some more stuff with that later. And we also have a couple common elements. Many of these we initiate the global class of WTW database, DB. WTW is WalkTheWeb if you're wondering. So WalkTheWeb database, so WTW DB. I don't trip over my own tongue. And some of these I'm just passing on to that other class since they're already the functions are already written in the database. I try my best not to write functions in more than one place and just reuse the same one. That way, if there's ever any updates I have to do to that function, all I have to do is go to the one location where it exists and fix that particular function. Okay, so this one has config file, and then it has users and DB. Users, let's see, I'm curious, I'm pretty sure I pulled the global when I used users. And this user ID, but I did not set the global. See, that's why I was checking that. Sometimes I just get it in my head and thinking about what part I haven't done or have done. So here we need, actually I got two different session variables, so I'm going to call it from up here. I'm going to set the user class at the same time, even though technically I don't think I need it. If I'm setting the local ones and always pull the local ones, then it's not an issue. Quick, easy question. Let's find out. When I go to the different tables, which one am I on? Connecting grids, and I use the function for connecting grids. There it is. Over here, I am using the iframe user ID. Okay, so I'm not going to the user class anyway. I didn't think so, but it's always good to check because I don't think I need to load the user class for every iframe class. I don't think I told it to use that. So if that's the case, let me find that on the page, and it's not being used. Okay, we just saved ourselves from loading something on this page that's not needed. That's always a good thing. Whenever we can eliminate something from loading, that speeds up the code. One less thing to do. Okay, so we're good on that stuff. Has track page view, and that's all we have in there. Okay, so connecting grids. We'll bring this open. We've got our... Okay, we went to the right class with the functions as we did it, and we're good to go on connecting grids. So the next one is file commands. So we'll do the same thing here. I'm just going to wrap that in a try loop, or catch it in a loop, and we're going to, this one is file. I like to put, whenever I send an error, what I'm actually doing is writing it to the database, and I am referencing where it is in the code, so the folder path, which is core, and then iframes in this case, and then the name of the file that it's in. And then if it has more than one function in the file, then I put in over here where it has a hyphen and then the name of the actual function that errored. Then it gets the error message with an exact path right back to where it actually had a problem. So easy to work with, easy to adjust, fix, use. And we're going to set the global files here. And we want to use that for the functions. So when we copy file, And just so you know, even though it says delete file, that function is empty. I put it there as a placeholder for being able to do that type of functions, but at this time, I'm not in any hurry to expose a function like that out to the public. Whenever I do deletes in databases, technically I don't even delete. I actually set a flag in a field in the database to tell it that I'm going to delete that particular file. That way I don't have to worry about it actually deleting anything. In the worst case scenario, you go back in the database and you set the flag back to not be deleted, and then all of a sudden all your stuff shows back up. So just a security issue. We don't actually delete anything from the database. There is a chance that I'll do some code cleanup, or we'll do some things that can clean the database later on and would actually check for things with a deleted flag and maybe a certain date. Anything before that have been archived and deleted, then we can remove it. But at this time, I'm not going after that yet. Okay, and of course, at the start of the thing, what we want to do is bring in our iframe function. And then we want to, I bring in the iframe function because we have more, even though right now it appears that I'm only using it to track the web pages, but the iframe function also does the session start. It initiates the variables, it ties in the config file, so it does more than just sit on the page there. Okay, so file commands, so M-A-N-D-S, okay. And there we go, that catches that. We don't have any more functions in this page. We're good to go. Okay, to the next one. Files mine. Now this one has a little bit more logic to it, and also, first I want to see, am I still using this one? There was a couple of these that I didn't use anymore because I wrote more improved versions of them. So I just want to make sure that I'm actually calling it from something, and yes I am. Let's see what we're doing. Load my files page. We're going to see if we're calling that function. Okay, from the looks of it, we're calling it quite a few places, so if that's the case, then I definitely am going to continue on with that process, this page. First things first, we're going to wrap it just like we did before with these items. We're going to take the name of the page there, gets rid of session start. We'll do something with those in a second. We don't need to bring that up in right now. Okay, fully wrapping it with the error catching, try catch loop or section. Okay, and this is files my. Right here, I'm loading that, which random string we now have in the we now have random string available in the iframes page, so we actually don't need that there. We can use that function instead. Let me see if it's being used still. Now, some of the stuff I had created when I was running through it the first time, so some of it was repeats of stuff I've already done. Other pieces I found better ways to do it, or I may have even moved what I was using so that it would only use it in certain places. I wanted to make sure that I put like functions in certain places, and also the main goal behind that is trying to make sure I don't load any more than I have to at any one time. So by taking care of that, getting the like functions, putting them into certain files, all I have to call is the individual file that has the functions for that particular page. So that's why the function classes match up with the iframe classes. For example, I have iframes action zones, and then up here I have class WTW action zones. that's the page that gets included in that Action Zones iframe page. Same thing for avatar and building, community, connection grids. Each one of these have a file that is included that is the class used by that particular iframe page. Now there are a couple of them that are multi-purpose, for example, common molds. The reason is I have building molds, community molds, and thing molds on separate pages, yet I have one molds form and one molds iframe. The reason for doing that is because the database was getting very large very quick in a single table, and so I split it into 3, even though they have like designs and same field names and everything. I split them into 3 so that we could kind of disperse what type of object you're pulling and set it in a different table, making each one of those tables 1/3 of their natural size that they're going to be. It just helps with database speeds. You really want the functions to be able to handle fast from the database. You want them to be able to stay fluent. You want the animation to stay fluent and not waiting on data to get to the screen. And so every one of these kind of things just do exactly that. Okay, so we have the process here. I'm going to have to, I'll probably, later on I'll do the file size and move it over to the config file. That's something that I want to do, so let me make a note of it here. Move upload file size to config. We can also read that dynamically so that we can see what the PHP configuration allows for the file size, and so we won't actually have to have it in the code. But until I do that, this is kind of just a note that I hard-coded it, set my server at the time to 128 meg, and then put the number directly in here, make sure it didn't go over it. Like I said, that isn't the way it's going to be. This config class is no longer needed here. The other thing I included in my iframes class is the ability to get value. This get value, what it is I'm actually just checking from the query string to get the query string, grab the value, making sure it's not empty, and also if it is empty, I set the default value. So that way it's instead of doing that on each one of the pages, which tends to be very repetitive, like here, I'm bringing in a variable called item, and I'm doing these, 3 lines of code. Technically you could put it all in one, I know. You could use less text in some of the notations. But instead, I just do WalkTheWeb iframe, and I call the getValue class. And then all I have to do is say what is the name of the item I'm trying to do, and if it doesn't come through, what value I want it to be. So that becomes very easy and very simple to cut some lines out of the code. Like here, the hide, I have it being a 0 if it's not done. So when I do hide, I can set the default value to 0 right here. Then if it's not set, if it doesn't read in a value, it'll automatically use the 0. Category is blank if they haven't typed one in. And now, instead of all this here, we have just those 3 lines of reading in a variable. The other thing is user ID and okay, so building community thing. Okay, so user ID and username are also something that, okay, we're pulling them here, but I'm going to change that to the class also. If a user uploads a file, it's actually going to be under their username. It's different ways of tracking who did what where. Then a webmaster can actually look under certain key field names, numbers, and then put the different data where it needs to be. In this particular case, I don't need the user ID function because we actually have anywhere that we're going to do this user ID, we're actually going to go with the WalkTheWeb iframe user ID because that is using the session variable. So we're going to do that here and here. If it's not empty and if it's set, then we're going to use the user ID from there. I'm going to use it here. And I created a different couple folders, media folders, so that anytime they upload files, they always end up in the same place. Tried to make it as neat and easygoing as possible so that as people work on sites and upload their own images, we can track where they came from, which user folder they're under. Okay, so content URLs. That, I've got a couple other plans with that, but for now it works. We don't need username right now either. Session return page we don't need. I've got other plans with that stuff, so I'm just not taking any farther for now. Okay, so then let's convert these up here. I think I'm using building community thing. We don't use those two anymore. And we're going to go community, building, and thing. Okay, and now we don't need any of those. So real clean, I just took out a bunch of lines of code that I had before. Now they just read in the value based on the iframe class. Okay, and I believe that's creating directories. This content path, I need to check to see if that's set, but I'm going to do that at a different time here. Check for content defined, use class value instead. Putting that there because I'll catch that in a few minutes. I'll probably do that one next. But it's all little cleanup things that I have to do. See, the content path, if it's not set in your config file, so let's say you deleted it or something, then I can still do a best guess at what it's going to be because I can look and see what your folder is that you're using. I can find out where the code's being run from, use that path, manipulate what is the content folder from there, and set it to the physical content folder underneath the site. So if you take it out of the config file, it still would function and none of these pages would break. Where if we leave it here, it would break the page immediately if it runs into that area. So let's see now, so we have that part. Like I said, I'm coming back to that. The other part is this whole users and then the user ID. I have some other possibilities with that, so I'm not married to that decision. Okay, so now here we're bringing in we're checking the database. We're using a stored procedure, get files by username. So what I want to do is, now this is the stuff that I am converting right now. We're coming over here. We're going back to my other website that used stored procedures that we're converting from. And okay, I talked too much, forgot what I was looking for. Get files by username. At least they're all alphabetical, right? And get files by username. And in this stored procedure, it is basically if the user is not blank, then it's one big statement. So the only thing we need to check is to make sure that the username is not blank. And then we do results equals WalkTheWeb iframe query. And what the query does, it's a function that scrubs the data, makes sure everything's safe to run in the database, and then it executes it and returns an array from the database. Returns the record set, converts it to an array for PHP. So we actually get what we're looking for here. Okay, next we have, this user ID string right here. We're going to put that in to the SQL code. Okay. And do it like that. And I notice it's using it. Is it using a couple places? I like not having it wrap too far off the page so I can see what it's actually trying to do. This statement is actually checking to see what type of of item they are and labeling them. Like I have a bunch of different ones that I'm considering docs. I have others that are considered audio and others that are considered video. And then I have a default one, what to do with them if they're not in one of those categories. But this allows me to select, based on that particular item, which display to do on the screen. And this is in our media library page on the website. I'll show you that shortly, but right now I just want to let you know that we are bringing that in and making sure that it's pulling the data from there. So let's see. Okay, so up here we did item, we did category, and we did hide. So I changed it to Z hide. Okay, so category, I think the only places we're going to use that is the query string. Okay, I like to use Z category, Z item. Z is kind of my identifier. That means it's a local variable within that page. So as I find them, as I'm trying to be as consistent as possible, I'm actually updating them and changing them right in the code so that I have some consistency. It just means local variable, so it means I'm not digging it up from some other place as I use them. So with that said, I want to make sure that I catch them all. Is it being used anywhere up here? Nope, it isn't. Okay. So that one's Z item. And category. I love how Notepad++ automatically highlights things as you click on them, and it'll show you anywhere else they're used in the page, like category right there. I already changed the variable. Okay, category here. This is where I would update that one. And of course we got Z hide there. And I don't think, I know I got to click it again just to highlight it again. I know I could do a search across the page. This kind of works for me. You'd be surprised how many times when I go across the code and I highlight or don't highlight something and I'm checking it manually instead of doing a search and replace, I catch other things that I needed to fix or that need to be adjusted, and I can add them to my list. So even though sometimes it's very easy to do a find across a page, grab a certain word, and then you're done, many of the times I'm actually looking deeper as I'm doing it. Like here we got an item, Z, okay, that comes up there. And we have that category. Now I believe we have them all except for the very top one. So it kind of glances at the code and lets me figure out if there's anything extra that I need to do, different pieces that I've replaced, changed, messed with. Okay, so the other thing is I have the item here and I have it said there. I'm not using it here, but I'm retrieving it where? Items here, so that's the other one I missed. Okay, so the item values, and it's not being used anywhere else? No. Okay. And it's down there. Okay, so Z item. So if Z item is a blog image, this one's passing in an ID, and it's saying if it's a blog image, it has to be treated a little differently because one of them is more generalized for files, and the other one is actually specific to an image only. I have more data scrubbing. I have more validation happening on the select image ID one because you wouldn't have to necessarily be a user with admin access, where this one, you have to be a user with admin access even to get to it. So I've already protected it many different ways along the way. So, okay, now the next thing we want to do is hide is a variable or a number, so I'm going to do that, and then category is in the database, the category is a string value. I'll go ahead and just copy and paste those over. Okay, and okay, so now I've brought back the results. The other thing was I did say that I need to make sure that it has an ID because we're bringing back my files, which is the logged on user. So if the logged in user is blank, then we don't need to bring it back. So if it's not empty and is set, I know it treats empty and set as two different things, so we're going to make sure we catch them both regardless. I'm going to put it to right there for the moment because I'm getting rid of most of what's below that. And we're going to keep our indentation perfect. Makes it easy for your eyes to follow what it's doing and where. Here for each results as row. And now we have the loop through our record set that we bring, not record set, sorry, it's an array. We convert the record set to an array and bring it back. So now get files by username. I grab the whole thing. We're doing that function directly in the code, so we're not doing that. And the next part is what happens with what it brings back, which is going to be this section of code right here. And there's some error trapping there, so we're going to double check. I think that happens, yes, so if the number of rows is 0, we're sending back different information. I want to make sure we do that same functionality here. So if we do this, and then next thing we can do is if the count of the array, which is results, equals 0, then the good news is we always know we're bringing back an array because our class that I created to do the query will send back either an empty array. We don't have to check for null that way. We can check to see how many records are there, the count for the array, and go from there. Okay, so no sound load. This one basically tells it if you don't have anything on that particular page, for example, you're looking for images and you haven't uploaded any images, then it knows, hey, I tried to do images, and it'll send back with a little bit of a class for red with a little warning message type format, and it says no uploaded images found. Use the stock images button above or the upload button. So we're telling them what to do, where to go to make a difference if they want to change that. Okay, now that that's all put in there, we don't need any of this because that's all the call to the database and to run the store procedure. So we've eliminated the need for that. And reset upload button. This is, okay, so when you load the page, if it was a post, I want to reset the upload button. Where that is, just so you know, I included a script for iframe JavaScript. And this particular one has a couple of my common functions that I like to use. And ultimately, this is one of those type things where when you click on the button, the first thing it does is you don't want people to upload more than once. So the second you click the upload button, it disables the button so that it can't be clicked again, and it goes to uploading, and it has a couple different dots on it. When it completes and it finishes the code on the page here and it cycles through, it goes through, it finds out if there's an error or if it finds out if the file worked and was able to do it, and it either puts the error on the page or it finishes out. But since it's a post method, it'll reset the upload button through it'll run this little JavaScript that says reset the upload button on the Windows open. So quick, easy way to make sure that it resets the button ready for the next upload or another attempt or whatever you're doing. Okay, and I think we have that whole class wrapped up now. I don't think there's any other parts here. Okay, loud file types. Okay, so we got past that one. Now, in-use images. Here we go again. This one is selecting, let me find out where this, in-use images. Can we guess if this page is in use? What it is, when you go to the media library and you're working on, let's say somebody gave me permission to work on a community. And while I'm working with them in the community, it's their community, they uploaded images in the past. Now, when I upload images, I get my images on my tab of ones that I uploaded that I've contributed into the system. But at the same time, I have stock images, I have my images, but if somebody did something, let's say I'm helping them build it, and they put some fancy brickwork on the walls, and I need to add another wall or change that wall, I need to be able to find that image again and add it to another object. But it's not in my library of available images. So what I've done is for every single thing you edit, if you're editing a community, a building, or a thing, it will automatically read in what images are currently in use in that scene, so that all you have to do is, like if you're going to repeat and you want to make sure you're using the same image, all you have to do is look under that tab under the library when you're adding, when you're setting the texture on the page, and you'll find all the ones that you've already got. Okay, so that you'll find all the ones that are currently in use on that current web page. That way, just makes it real friendly for being able to set and use those images, reuse them, and basically, since they've already shared them in the community or building or thing, they've already given you permission to use it some more in that building, community, or thing. Now, that does not go for if you have a building or thing that was used by dragging the building into your community, because you don't have edit access to the building. So they can have images on the building or the thing that you're putting into your community or building, and basically you don't have it unless you have edit access to that particular building or thing. Hope that didn't completely confuse you. And on this page, I'm actually not doing any file commands. I don't know why I wrote the file command in there unless I'm doing some checks. Let me see what's on here, because I think I put it in that page and then went, no, I don't need any of these functions. No, I don't. The only thing I'm really looking for is a building or community or thing is not blank. Then I'm running these different SQL commands based on that. And then I'm cycling through the record set to show you the images that you've pulled back from the site. So that should... Okay, so what I want to do is, let's change that to in use images. We're going to make sure it's part of our page tracking, so that we get hits with the Google Analytics. Okay, and in use images. This is the path that we're actually sending to the track page view function, so we can make it go to call up as a certain page. We don't need these anymore. And okay, since we just did this on the last page, I'm going to say we're going to copy paste these three, and we'll just put them right here. We don't need the username or ID. We're pulling those through the functions. We don't need the includes, and we don't need that. So this particular page doesn't even have a process that we're using, because what we're doing is we're bringing them up, we're using them while we're looking at that tab, and they're using JavaScript to select them. So this is basically a display-only page and interacted through JavaScript, so client-side. So the first thing I want to do is results equals blank. Now, do I need to make it that you have edit let's see, do I want to test the access that you have before doing this function? I think that's a good idea. If you don't have edit building access or community or thing access, then you shouldn't be able to go in here at all. You got to be logged on to get to this page. So what we'll do is we're going to wrap this function in if WalkTheWeb iframe, And I wrote a handy little function that says check the user access. And it passes 3 variables. Each one of these are the community ID. Did I change those to a... Nope, see, I didn't even do that here. Let's go Z community ID, Z building ID, so we'll know that they're local variables that we read into this page. We could do the same on this page too. I'll fix it real quick just because we want to be consistent. And now going through here, I think I know where I used them. Did I use them? Are they even in use? Let me find out. So now that I've gone through all that and looked and I don't see them, let's find out if we even needed them. Find on this page. That's it. And we'll check building. I didn't think I saw them on that page, and this confirms it. Those are the only 2 found, and thing. There's no reason to read in variables if we're not even using them on the page. Must have been some plans when I was coding it to do something else here and include some other code. But that takes care of that. We don't have them on that page anymore. No need for it. But we do have them on this page because we are using them. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write these here. Z community ID, Z building ID, and Z thing ID. Now the other thing that this function does is it does check to see if you have access not only to the item that you're working with, but if you tried to pass all 3 of those variables through at a time, then it would only use the hierarchy of community, then building, then thing. So it prevents people from trying to, like, I have access to a thing, but not this community, but then I get a positive reading. Voids that whole thing. You're only editing one object at a time. Even though you have access to edit other items, you would have to click a button and load that item under edit mode to change that particular item. So I can have a community and I walk by a building and I need to change something in the building. Well, it'll let me click the building and then select a link saying, or a button saying, edit this building. At the same time, I can do that with a thing. So it takes me right to where it is and lets me edit it if I have access to edit it. So in this case, I am checking the user access to make sure that they have access to edit it before I do anything else. And then I'm going to do this particular function here. I'm just going to cut it out of there. We'll put it here because this is where we're actually using it. And also, even though, well, we need to change that to Z building instead of, I don't have to worry about these functions. We're not going to use them anyway. But okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure it's not empty, and I'm going to make sure that it's set. Okay, and oops, I'm gonna make sure we don't put one too many. So the other thing, just for my own sanity, is and consistency in the code, I am working extremely hard to make sure every time I'm doing something to all 3, community, building, and thing, that I do them in the order, in that exact order. Community, then building, then thing. It simplifies code. Also, if you're looking at some very long processes and you need to scroll down to the next part or something, it's a quick, easy way to know by what you're looking at where to go next, if it's below or above where you're currently looking. So just a helpful tool that I do when I code. Next part is we're going to put that in there. And we're going to change that from building to thing. Okay, so now we've checked if each one of the sections we have a building thing in here. And now I'm going to get these stored procedures and we're going to write them local. So results equals, and then we're going to call our function, our class, iframe, and we're going to do a query. Okay, so we're going to do that. You know what? While I'm at it, I'm just going to, instead of you watching me type all day, I'm going to take that, copy it 2 more times here. Okay, so what we have is we have get images thumbnails by community ID. So get images thumbnails by community ID, alter store procedure. We want to bring open this one, and as you can see, it has a pretty good size select statement because I'm grouping it to find any images that are used in your current scene. And I also, since images are used more than once in the scene, I did a group by clause in the statement. I wanted to make sure that when you're doing it, you can section out. You only get one of each image, so that helps us with that part of it. We're going to do a little line up here. Okay, also uploads and put it all through the code. Okay, the other thing that I'm going to do here while I'm at this is we have a property for our tables. You'll be able to see it in here. Let me just show you where I have one of these. Am I doing any database work? No, I'm not. Okay, let me just table defs. Okay, so I have a table prefix because I don't know what the user is going to use as their table prefix when they set it up. This allows them to actually load this, use one database with multiple instances of websites if they wish. And the one thing is I need to do it, put in the table prefix, but I want to alias it. In this case, I'll call it U1 for uploads one is what that. Actually, let's see. Why did I do it there? Helps if I do it in the right place. Let's go down to the from statement. Let's start in the right place, and then we can fix it from there. From uploads. So I'm changing it from uploads, and I'm going to call that an alias of U1. And then anywhere it uses the word uploads as a reference to the field, I'm going to change that. Okay, I'm going to do a find and replace, and I'm going to go through a little faster here. And that one I want to find next because I don't want to replace the actual reference of which table I'm using. And I knew I had a good number of them here, so going through. And of course I just hit it anyway. That's what happens when you go too fast through the find and replace. Okay, so that takes care of uploads. I didn't find another uploads in here, did I? Nope, we're good. Okay, so table prefix, I have that. We're going to pass our variable in for community ID. And this particular statement is used specifically if it's a community ID. So we have that in place. We already know we have access to that community because I did the check with the check user access function that we wrote. Okay, so table prefix, let's see, I'm just going to glance through this one more time and make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh yeah, the other part is we have more than one table because we're doing an inner join. So I want to inner join web images, and I'm going to call that W1. Now I need to see everywhere that it's using web images and make sure I call that appropriately. Let's see, no more to the end. I'm not bringing back any of those fields. I just need to make the connection so that it'll bring back what I need. Okay, so left join. Okay, where clause starts there. The where clause actually is part of this. Notice it is a select statement wrapped within another statement. So as long as I do my indentions right, that becomes easier to see. So here we're doing from, we're doing select, because that's what I want, is I want the inner join to be up here. I'm going to move it to that level. And now I'll move the select underneath that. Doing some notation like this, then I can see quickly with my eyes from, it has an inner join. It has a whole bunch of label fields here. They just go off the page, but I don't care if a fields list goes off the page, but what I really need to see is the from. So when I do the from part here, I can go there. We'll alias that with CM1 for community molds 1. So then we have community molds used everywhere, and that's one reason why I was fixing these. See, the thing is, I've referenced them. Oh, web images went off the page, so that's a W1. That's why I'm double checking these. Since I'm doing the table prefix, I could either put the table prefix in every one of these to reference what table prefix the name of the actual table is, or I can do it once, do an alias, and then fill in the blanks every time they get used. So with that said, obviously, I would rather see where I use community molds, and I'm going to community mold there, 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 and there. So now I have all the community molds handled within that table. And the other one is the let's see, web images, and it, like I said before, scrolling off the side of the page makes a difference if you're looking for any more of them. And they're all aliased, so we've got these three tables. We have uploads, U1, we have community molds, we have a left join with web images, and those are inner joined to find out which uploads are being used by this community. And I also, here's the other part, there are multiple things that you can set a texture to. So if you use one as an image on the face of a button, for example, I have it here, you have a hover for that particular button. You have a height map if you, let's say you created a mountain or a island or some type of land formation, then there could be a height map that's in the uploads table. We also have a texture hover and a texture ID. So basically I'm bringing back each one of those and seeing, is it something that you've used in this particular community? If it is, bring them all back. Now, as we add different things and store them in the uploads table, we may extend this piece, but then all I have to do is make sure that, or the upload ID equals, and then from the community molds, the different foreign keys, pick out which field is needs to bring back an image. And these are mostly your textures. There could be one for a, let's see, texture is the ground. Texture hover image, I don't even remember what that one was all about. I'm sure it has to do with the height maps and stuff, so because I can't imagine why you'd... Oh, I know why. Not only can you use textures for creating land formations, but I created a couple signs, for example, where I used a black background, I used white lettering as a font, and then I used that as a height map, set it to only about 1 or 2 units high, and then set the set up an image over the top of it. What I ended up with was a nice raised 3-dimensional sign to put on a building. So cool feature, cool functionality. So it is accounted for here. You do have that option. Okay, next. Left join. Okay, we left join both those tables, U1 and U2, on left join U1. Wow, I did some fun stuff. I must have really had fun when I wrote that query. All I know is it works, so I'm not changing a thing. Okay, so that actually, left join U1. I'm joining it back to itself. I'm inner joining this, then I'm left joining to find out the web size version of it and the original version of it. What that does is this. When I create a table, I don't need the on to be the same level here. When I create a table, what I've done is I'm pulling back the values. When you create an image, every time you upload an image, it actually uploads multiple images on various sizes. Now I have the original, I have what I call web size, which is a 512 by 512 copy of it. In most cases, when something, unless you're standing right next to it and it's farther away on the screen, you can actually use the web size because it's only using, let's say, 512 of your screen. So it's at its highest quality that it's going to be. And as you get farther away, you can tell that you don't even need it at that quality to be a perfect image on the screen, because it's the number of pixels on the screen that it's being shown and related to the size of the graphic that you're using. So the only time you need larger graphics is when you get close-ups to them. So what I did was I have the original image, and you could do whatever size images you want. Word of caution, it does take time to load, and it could cause pauses in the animation if you get too large. But I'm using by default the web size. Then for certain things that really matter, let's say you put a flyer on the wall and you've stretched it very large, for example. You can click a checkbox on the site and tell it to use the original ID. That way it uses the original quality at its highest quality without affecting anything else in the scene. They could be at lower qualities, just the quality it needs to be to look good and run right. Okay, so we have, let's move it on through here. We have get images thumbnails by building ID. And I'm going to pull that one. And it's very, very similar to the one we just did, except in this case we're actually looking at the building instead of the community. Okay, and we're going to bring that in here. We're going to do a little bit of lineup just like we did on the other one. We're going to do a little bit of aliasing the table names, making sure that we're using the table names as they exist. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is note, we're going to do this table prefix, and then we're going to fix the ones that need it. So the first thing is the from clause. We have it here. We have building molds, all these on. We have left join uploads, and then we have left join uploads 3. Notice I didn't use uploads 1 while I create that statement. See, I had a feeling something was going to be like that, and so since it was the second time I use uploads, I called it a 2 without labeling the first one as 1. The good news is I don't have to rename all those or worry about overlapping which ones I've already done. So in this case, we're going to do U1 for anywhere there's uploads. So we're going to take this here. And last time I did the function to do this, and it actually jumped up the page and made me feel like I might have hit something I didn't mean to. I fixed it, but at the same time, these are easy enough to see when you highlight them. So as you can tell, we have a lot of upload fields, and every time you highlight one, it shows you where all the rest of them are. So when you get used to seeing them, you can actually move your eyes to the next one. When you highlight one, you get the idea of where the next one's going to be. And that way, the where clause here, get these ones, and you can catch each one of them. And notice these are tables again, and they're called U2 and U3, so I'm not changing those ones, which is exactly what I have to fix on the one above me. See, I knew it hit something on the page that I didn't mean to hit, and that's another reason why I glance at code and constantly double check what I'm seeing. We have uploads here. Another thing I do, you're gonna to take note of, this is a good practice for developers. Anytime you do a SQL statement and you know that you're going to bring back multiple records, and I want them sorted a certain way, one thing I always do at some point in my order by clause, I always put the field unique index value. The reason is, at some point there could be, like update date, there could be more than one item with an update date the same. There could be more than one with a create date the same. There could be some with more than one with the same file date. But by putting the unique ID in the order clause, no matter how you call that database, they will always be in the same order. So if they have the same value, like I've had times where I name the same community name the same thing because I'm getting ready to replace my homepage or whatever, and I want to make sure that I'm designing it with this name in place. When I see them on a list of all the different communities I have and I see the names there, I may see more than one, but I always know if I click on the first one, oh, that's not the one I want to work with. I can click on the second one, and now I know that is the one I need to work with. But they always stay in the same order, so they don't change orders every time you call them. The sort is the exact same way, and it's not by accident. So that's another key part of it, is you don't want it to be by accident that it works. When you do things that work by accident, somebody does an upgrade to SQL, for example, and next thing you know, you end up with different issues. So right here we did the left join. It was supposed to be left joining the uploads files, not the number. I knew it looked weird when it said left join U1. That meant I was pulling this table a second time, which usually you pull it back from the database as another field and attach it in again under different circumstances. So just by going back through there, I recognized that that was actually a mistake, and it overwrote it when I did the file replace. I may have even done that one by manual as I went through there. But now I caught it. Those are tables, which means I also have to set the table prefix on those tables, or it will not find those tables. So now that's how I caught it, was I noticed they're pulling tables, and I went, wait a minute, I didn't have a prefix on it. Okay, so now I'm pulling them through. It simulates the exact same thing it did on this version. What I like doing is moving the inner join to this level, moving all these, which are the where clauses for that join, the on and the on. There we go. So now you can see immediately there's a from, there's an inner join, there's a left join, and a left join. So it just works for not only just me working on this site, but for anybody that follows into my code, it would be easier for them to follow and see what I've done. The same thing about highlighting these with the extra double quote in here and stuff. I know I could put single quotes around the variable and it'll still pull in the variable, but in this case, I'm purposely making them stand out in the code of something that I'm passing. And it's all about consistency. Once you start doing it a certain way, no matter what, keep doing it the same way for everywhere that it uses it. The more consistent you are in the way you code, the more consistent everything will work. And I've had times where I find something that didn't work, and because I was consistent in the way I coded it, it was real easy to go back through and pull every instance that looked the same because it had the same pattern, and I changed them all at once in a matter of seconds. So updatability, reliability, being able to work with your code, being able to tie things in, every bit of that is all good practice. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing with this table. Believe me, once I get this part done, this is actually going to go pretty quick through this section, this page. And in fact, this whole section of iframes, we're most of the way through it already. Most of them use the class functions, so all I have to do is call the class functions, which we'll get to shortly. I'm going to move that down to that level, putting this here, putting that one there. We're going to put left join this here, and left join this here, and that should get us those pieces. And Z, like I said in my notation, if I use Z in a variable, it means as a starting part of the variable, it means it's a local variable and I didn't pull it from another page. Little notation like that makes it real easy to find things, update where they're accessed, how they interact with other things. Okay, so thing molds, I don't know, did I do that here? No, building molds, I did not change that here, which means every one of these wouldn't have found the molds. So that's going to be BM1 for building mold 1. Now we're going to change every field that used that reference. And make sure we get that. So now the matching of how they connect up the different tables are going to come through right there. Okay, and on this particular one, the first thing we need to do is the U1 for uploads 1, table 1. Notice it's not in use in the table, which is always a good sign. So we're going to check uploads. Now we're going to replace each one of these using copy paste feature. Control V for paste, Control C copies, Control V pastes. If you're a programmer, I'm sure you know that and you use it a lot. Okay, so we have uploads here, and I'm here. And these ones do not change. That's U1, and this one does. Okay, now we have uploads here. So Notepad++ lets you double-click an item to select it. It shows a little darker on the one that you're selecting, and it also highlights anywhere else that it is in your code, which works great because your eyes get to see where you're going next without having to hunt too much. And you also can see very quickly if you're going to miss something that you haven't accounted for. Okay, so with all those in place, we're going to do thing molds. TM1 for thing mold 1, and we have thing mold table here. And I believe that's all of them. Okay, and did we do that on the first one with building our community molds? Yes, we did. Well, there's community mold there. There's CM1 internal in the thing. That one's a little bit more complex. We have building mold 1, but then there's no inner join selected table piece, so that one's fine. And the same thing for thing molds. There wasn't another grouping of a table that we had to search. Okay, now that I have all that back, we're going to do for each loop. And the good news is we already have this written. We are doing this. When it comes back, no matter what it is, this is what we do with it, which prints it all on the page. And now we do not need any of this. And we limited another database, direct database reference. Notice we have the rows, we have the field names that we're bringing back. We have the information we need to pass back into the data. We have the file data for the thumbnail, which lets it show it directly on the page. And that's it. So that brings back a page with those pieces in place. That one's done. And now the next one after that is mold. And same thing on this one. We're going back to working with here, where we have setting up this whole piece. We want to create the instance. This is going to be mold. I'm working with a mold. Mold is our wrapper for all of you that have been here. We already know this, but mold is the wrapper for working with. It's the wrapper for a mesh. So instead of calling it a mesh, which is the raw object, the mold is the mesh with all of the pieces that I've put on top of that. So where I've wrapped it and gave it properties about what load zone to open and all the other pieces, if I call it mold, it gives you all the properties of the item with the additional properties that I've assigned to it. Just a way to differentiate between the two. Okay, so we have okay, and we're passing all that information through here. Not going to worry about those right now. We're not pulling anything from a query string. Since I did a try, I need to do the catch part of it. Copy that, put it here. Whenever I copy and paste things from another page, it's just for consistency. I like to make sure everything has all the same format, very consistent in the way it's typed, very consistent in the way it's used. Every bit of that just makes it run that much better. Okay, the bottom of the page, we're good with those. Those are all JavaScript calls. And now the other part here is we have save things, save building, and save community. Now save thing mold. Why did I do that? Let me double check and make sure. when I do the save thing mold, one of the things is I am bringing back only one piece of data. Before, I was bringing back a record or an array of values. Yes, I did change it to bring back just the thing mold, just like I did on Notice Save Building. So we're gonna that's not correct. It's not even on that page. Okay, so mold ID. Mold ID is what we're bringing back, and we do not need those two things. That was bringing back other parts of it. Okay, so there's actually 3 different functions here, depending on which one it picks, which one it needs to do. There are specifically, you know what, I need to reverse the logic on this, and the reason is, let's do it this way. Let's line this up. We're going to fix this page right now. Each one of these different classes have different, each one of these different pieces have different classes. So if I'm pulling a community, I need the community mold. If I'm working with a building, I need the building mold. And if I'm working with a thing, I need the thing mold. Well, once I do that, then I need to check what button was pushed to run what function. So in this case, I have a delete mold, and I also have a save mold or save new mold. And when I do them, I need to be able to pull and just load. I don't want to load all 3 of these each and every time. I only want to load them when I'm working on a particular one of them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a section here where, okay, so I'm loading only the item that I'm working with at the time. So building, community, or community, building, and thing. And I'm also reversing the order, my own sanity. I'm putting in a reverse order because that I've been doing everything from community, building, thing, because that's the logical layering that the stuff has. Communities are your scenes, buildings are our buildings, and then you have your things that you put in your buildings and your communities. Okay, so by doing this, what it allows me to do is I can load the thing molds and use that class only if I'm working with a thing. So now I've just saved some memory in the computer, and I'm not loading everything. The other part is that's not correct. It's WTW thing molds. So it's a good catch there. It wouldn't have found the file. It would have given us would have balked at the code and told us that there was something wrong. But we're doing thing molds, and notice that thing molds, the class name is WTW thing molds. That's what we're using. So we're going to say that, and then we're going to say global. And now we can use anything that does a thing, we can use just that thing mold. We're going to do the same thing with the buildings. And we're going to use WTW building molds. And we're only going to use that when we do these functions. See, each one of these things lessen the amount of memory that the computer needs to run this code. Before, I was preloading everything, and I overloaded stuff that, or loaded things that were not in use yet, and all it did was make the code run slower and slower and slower as it went. When you want to run animation and you have all these extra pieces at the same time, what happens is things little by little will run slower. So what we want is we want those pieces there. Now based on if we're this part, we're going to layer it with if it's a new mold, and if it's save mold, this is going to be in all 3 of them. So if we're saving the mold, it's going to run this function. If we're saving the building, saving the community, and then next the other one is else if we're deleting the mold. So we have functions for that. Mind you, we never really delete anything. We just set a flag that says don't use this anymore. It's keep it in the database, but we're not using it. It also lets us undelete something when we ran into something and deleted something we should have kept. Okay, so if we know if the items are there, we know if the community item is there, so we've already tested that. So now we need these two functions, and we're going to put those under community, and that's if we're saving. So I'm going to put them right here. Okay, and mold ID is that mold ID, so we're passing in the value. We are passing it through here and moving on with it. And the other part is save new mold now is community molds. Save community mold. We're going to put it in here, reference that function in that class. And we're going to do the same thing with these two. We're going to take this one, which is building molds, and we're going to put it in here for save building mold. It's not iframed, it's in the building mold class, which we're only loading up last minute, right when we need it. And then we're going to do this one, which is the thing mold right here. I'm going to put it right there, and we're going to call that by the thing mold class. Okay, so that cleans up that part. Next part is the delete command. So now we're going to do delete thing mold if they hit this one. We're going to do delete building mold if they hit this one, and we'll fix it in a second. I saw that too. And finally, delete community mold here. And we have to set the classes on all three of these. So we're going to be going to this particular class. For that, we're going to go to this class. Actually, it already has a class on it. We're going to put it to the right class. And then we're going to go to this class for delete thing molds. We don't need any of this anymore, logic. So we knock all that out of there. Okay, so we've repositioned these where they pulled a certain one where we're doing it, and I purposely skipped this one just yet. I want to double check, but I believe that's in the mold common. Yep, common molds. Okay, so we're going to do a require once, and we're going to get the common mold class in here. I added one too many M's. Common molds, WTW common molds, and just to double check, that is this one here, WTW common molds. You know, just thinking about it, I can see how if somebody's programming, they may have a problem with that name being common molds and community molds. They're awfully close. So if I take common molds and we rename that to, let's first find it in all files. I want to see where I'm in use here. For everywhere we use common molds, and we change that to be molds common, then it doesn't fall in with community molds, building molds, and thing molds. And then it's molds common. Gets the same point across, but at the same time we won't. Okay, it looks like I can totally change that without affecting any place it's in use. So find that, and we're going to replace it with WTW molds common. Because I've even clicked on that file. I go to open community molds, and I've clicked on it like 3 or 4 times. Just having not enough letters difference in the two names. My brain only sees the beginning part of it, and they look the same for quite a few characters. They even end the same. And as you know, if you've ever taken any of those tests, psychological tests or anything, then you probably know that people don't read every letter in every word. They look at the beginning and end of the word, recognize it, and move on. That's why we can read so fast. So the next thing I'm going to do is change the name of the class itself, which is right here. Open that up and rename this page to Molds Common. and that'll save us a lot of insanity later on. It's that kind of stuff that makes the difference between great code and good code. Okay, copy, and we're going to do global. Oops, global, and we're going to put that there. Oh, it helps if I don't put an equal sign there. Global, WalkTheWeb, molds common, and now I can use that reference here, and that's what we're doing. We're putting in the class that executes from. Now see, this way we have a layer where we're not loading any more than we need, no matter which. If it's any one of those three items, we're going to load the molds common, and that's going to be a handful of different functions. For example, in this case, it works with the saved web image, because the web image table itself, there's a couple tables in the database that actually use, that are combined building, community, and thing objects. And that's the connecting grids, the action zones, the web images, and I think there's another one. Let me just, if I glance at the list of names, I'll know in a second here. Stuff like the uploads obviously does. Upload objects do. A lot of these go across, there's other ones that go across more things. So web aliases use both. Yeah, there's a number of tables that use all three of the objects as we use them. So, okay, so now we have that code in place. There's no other code on this page. So we have it all wrapped into the classes like we want it. And that one takes care of molds. So now we're moving down to, I said molds, and I'm looking at a page that's called mold. Let's make sure I didn't mess that up anywhere. Okay, so we're still good. The next one is stock images. Now this one mimics the page more like the in-use images page. The difference is these are pulling the subset of stock images on the site. I don't think it has any need for community building and thing. It does not pull them by that. It gives you a generic set of stock images just so you have something you can work, and it also has sounds. So this page also pulls stock sounds, or it can pull all the rest of the stock images. Okay, so with that we're going to do the same thing with this page. We're going to wrap it into a function. We're going to bring in the common components. We're going to do a page tracking on it, and we're going to track stock images. We'll put that there, and I'm going to close the try catch function. Okay, and we'll call that stock images. And this part at the top part of the page brings in a bunch of variables, and the only thing we're actually using is the item, because we now have this available from our class. We don't need WalkTheWeb files. We don't need any of these other variables. Okay, so we've cleaned up this page quite a bit of things that we don't need to run. We have item, but now we're going to do that through our class also, which will be WalkTheWeb iframe. And it's the function getValue. And it's going to look for the value that we're looking for, the name. So we're going to put that in there and set a default value. And now we don't even need that part. So we've eliminated most of that code. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change these to Z items so that we know it's a local variable on our page. It doesn't read it anywhere there. I don't think it's using it anywhere here. Like I said, I'm looking for the little green outlining whenever I use something. So the only place it uses it is right, that if clause, where'd it go? Right here, to see if it's a sound. Okay, so we've read in the value. That's all we're doing in that part. And then we're going to come here. And you know something, it's our stock images. I'm not worried about security. If you have a page that comes open and you're working on something, then you can have the stock images. Well, let me rethink that. If you are maliciously hacking my site and trying to get in here and see these images, then maybe we do want the security in place. So what we'll do is, that would mean we would want to, just like this page, we're going to read in building community thing. Do I pass those? If I'm calling stock images, am I even passing those variables? Let's find out. File name to clipboard. We're going to see where we're calling this page in the JavaScript and seeing if we set the, I want to know, no, we're not passing it with it. So we're not passing those values. I'm not going to worry about them. I'm not going to add them. I'm not going to check security for that degree. They're images that we put in our stock folder, which means they're going to readily get out there. People are going to be using them if they want to use them. So there's no reason to sell ourselves short on that. Okay, so stock images. Let's see the next thing we do. We're going to have a statement here that says if, okay, if we have a sound, if it's not a sound. Okay, so if it's not a sound, wait a minute. If it's not string position sound equals false. Wow, that's one way to say something weird. Okay, let's do the positive end of that statement. I must have tried a handful of things and just thought that worked and left it when I originally wrote that. Okay, if string position equals sound, which means it's true, that it has a value and it says sound in it. Now if it is a sound, now we can come in here and we did the positive end of that. Now what I'm going to do is that's going to have it do, that's going to use this stored procedure, get sound by stock value. Otherwise, we're going to, and they even have a different way of displaying them, note. Otherwise, we're going to get the thumbnail stock images. So we're checking to see if it's a sound. Otherwise, we're going to assume it's an image. This page wouldn't be shown because we don't have anything stock that isn't a sound or an image. Later on, we can add one that does videos and shows what video sequences we have there and stuff available. Right now, I'm not pushing hosting too many videos. You can upload one and use it. It works just fine. You use them right off the images page. It'll pull videos too. So, and the images designed for the layout also works for videos. So that's not an issue. And if it's a non-issue, we don't bother having trouble with it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is results equal WTW iframe, which is our general thing here, and then we do query. And then we're going to, for each results as row. And the reason I did that is because I'm going to copy and paste this and do it twice. One is if we have stock images, so we're going to use that as the query, and we are going to, based on whatever comes through there, we're going to do this with it to each row. So we'll put that right there. Line it up a little bit. Okay, and then if we do this function, we're going to do this for each row. So I'm going to put that right here. Okay, next we're going to look in the stored procedures and find out get sounds by stock. Grab that one. Get sounds by stock, alter store procedure, and it's a nice clean little bit here. that there. And since they're stock photos, there's not much of a where clause other than I want stock photos and give me the ones that have something to do with audio. So that's pretty self-explanatory, pretty straightforward. So let's get that closed off. And the next one is we get sounds by stock. Then we have get images, thumbnails by stock. See, sounds, you either have the sound or you don't. When it comes to images, we're working with different size images. So get images, thumbnails by stock. So get images, thumbnails by stock right there. And copy paste that into our code right here. Do a little bit of lineup on it. And we look good. And notice once again, I use the ID of the actual database so that they always end up in the same order that they come out, even if something gets named the same by accident. Okay, now we can take this off here. We don't need this all the way down to there. And that takes care of pulling up the stock images. Another page down. So stock images. Now we have thing. This one looks like I've already done some work here. It looks like we've run the query through everything. Thing. Okay. That one's in place. Looks good to me. That one's done. And now we have okay, this one needs a little bit of work. Uploaded files. So here we have, we're going to wrap this in our class, with our class, not in our class, but using our class. We're going to do some error checking. We're going to put it like that. I'm going to take uploaded file. And notice I have an uploaded file and I have an uploaded files. Files is a list of files. Uploaded file lets you work with one particular file and all the properties that are attached to it. So that wasn't by accident. Okay, uploaded file, we're going to put that right there. And this is, and I want to make sure I type uploaded file, not uploaded files. Like I said, two different files. We don't want to pull the wrong one. This right here should be iframe instead of that other class. We'll worry about content path. I already have that in my notes to jump through and fix all the content path references. So I'm not going to worry about that just yet. And we're pulling, see, we're pulling for uploaded files. We're using community, base, and thing. Are we passing those in the variables anywhere? Okay, those are what type of files it accepts. And that's that. Okay, so no problem there. Uploaded files. Do I actually use? Okay, time to search. I've been holding it this way. If I'm just using them in the functions in the background, then it's not so much of an issue because I can pull them in on the function level too. But in this particular case, find common, find next. That's it. So I labeled it, never used it. Find that, and that one doesn't go anywhere but there. And find thing, and that doesn't go anywhere but there. I'm not worried about username and user ID at this point. So those aren't in use. Get rid of all that stuff. We no longer need these. Okay, require once class. Where am I actually calling the class? I'm calling here and there. That's only on the post back. These are ones we're going to write directly. Is there anything else using the class on this page? There's a lot of stuff on this page, but this one actually does quite a few sections of functionality. But the whole page requires a post back, and I only put the post back in one segment of the page, I believe. Let me double check that. Request method post, find that, And that's it. Okay, so there's only one post back, and I'm only doing it in one place. So what I'll do is I will put the files tools into here. And we don't need the database one because those are wrapped up into our other class. We're using them into the iframes class. Okay, so WTW files and animations. We have a couple animation functions here and uploaded files. Yes, this page does use animations. When you upload your avatar or your object, you can set a bunch of animations with it. If you do that, then you can take advantage of them. It writes them into here, writes them into the database as it goes. So those are in place. The other part is uploading files, and that part happens all up there. Okay, we're looking good. We've uploaded files. Okay, so that does the physical file, it moves it. Okay, so the uploading files on this page isn't actually being stored in the database, it's actually just putting the files in the folders for the different objects that we're working with. So if you upload a Babylon file, for example, the dude, then you can actually upload it, set it right on the site, and then call it from your code. You can call it, you can tell it to use it, not even in code. You can actually use it right from the program. Okay, so uploaded object ID, we're using that one to bring in. So you saw how we did that before. WTW iframes, and it is iframes, not iframe. Yeah, okay. Just wanted to. That's where I got it. I called it iframe, but then it's iframes folder. I keep going back and forth. I'm going to fix that. We're going to go through and clean those up all at once, and we're going to make it iframes because since I use iframes here, yeah, that was something that I kept on tripping on. We're going to do get val, and we're going to get this value. And if it doesn't come through, we're going to make it default as blank. So now we don't need upload object ID because I'll just double check. Yeah, that was that one. And the other one we're doing is upload object animation. We're going to take this. And that one is this one. So we're going to put all that here. And we're going to set the upload animation file there. And now we don't need those two lines of code. I'm going to, just for aesthetics, I like putting them where they're next to each other. Just my mind can see these as blank easier without having to go back and forth. Okay, there's a lot of variables here that I haven't used the Z notation yet with internal variables. I'm going to first continue down this page because I'm going to eliminate a lot of them as we go anyway. So that does that part and that. So this section right here, first of all, is there any security? Get upload object. And it does go by user ID, but we're going to look that up. Okay, so get upload object. Upload object right there. And there's a get upload objects, so it's get upload object. I am looking to see, first of all, does it find the user? What am I checking for? Make sure the user is real. Okay. Well, we already know that it's real because we already tested in the other functions, so we're going to say if WalkTheWeb iframe user ID. Oh, we're going to make sure that's not empty and is set. Okay, so since we're checking that, now we already know that it's a legitimate user because we checked the session variable. I can always when I set those on the iframe level, class level, I can do a check in the database to see if it's a valid user. That would be a good thing to do. So, in fact, I'll put that in the note. Check if it's in the database and if it's not deleted. Okay, check if the user ID, that's what I want, ID is in the database and not deleted. That'll allow me to, that'll help. Save that. Okay. So get uploads, what I'm doing is I'm finding out, okay, I already know that I got a good user. I'm going to do this select statement and results equal WalkTheWeb iframe query and we're going to put the query there. And the other part is we're going to pull the user right here. We're going to use that as the user, so it is not being passed in the variable, it's actually being written hard-coded. It's written through, it's pulled in through the, it's going through our check process that I just mentioned. And then this particular one is going to be here. I'm not going to change that to a Z variable just yet because I'll do a search and replace and find them all at once. Now, based on those results, what are we doing? We are doing this code, and there's an else clause. Okay, we'll get that. For each results as row, little shout out to Eva. Your game's cool. You put a lot of hard work into it, and yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, so for each results of the rows, we are going to do this code. And I don't need to change anything there. It's pretty standard what it's doing. It's all PHP, and I need it to write there. Yeah. And I'm going to put it here. And we're going to line it up a little bit. Okay, and then there was a check, so if count of results equals 0, then I want to say if count number of rows equals 0, I want to say this. No objects found, and that's good. The other way I did it, I had to see if there was an object, then I had to see if there were a number of rows, and I had to do both of them 2 separate times. So now it's just kind of condensed down into the one. Now that takes us all the way through there. The next one, if stock equals, we're going to do the same logic. So if stock equals that, I'm going to do a copy instead of moving it at the moment, because I want to make sure I catch all the pieces of code here. Then I'll erase that all at once. So if stock goes all the way down to there. Wow, okay, that's a lot of stuff. If stock equals 0, where am I getting stock? Let me find out. Stock equals 0. And stock gets changed based on the rows. Stock is not 1, so if it's still 0. Okay, so stock equals 0. And here we go. We are doing call this. Notice we've got an echo object there, so we are going to print that regardless. I'm going to pull it out of there and move it over. I don't want to duplicate efforts or get it in the wrong place. Next is we're calling get upload object animations by user ID. That's a mouthful. Get upload objects animations by user ID. I just looked for the longest one on the list. Okay, we have the select statement here. Easy enough. And we're going to do results equal WalkTheWeb iframe query Okay, whoops. No, I didn't mean to paste that into the text. I'm not going to type out my code into your text. Oops, if that would have been one long comment. Okay, let's move my cursor back to this page first. That helps. Okay, so this one is all of this. And notice I even have a case select statement within the field list. It's a pretty cool thing. Okay, we have the upload ID, and once again, I'm not passing the user ID. I'm going to pull it from my standard variable, which is the same as that notation. No reason to retype the thing. Okay, and then for each results as row, okay, we're doing that, and if there's any rows returned, we do this, and it's going to be from right there to there. So I'm going to copy that out of there, put it here. And then following that, I have it echoing these things regardless, just because it started them, it's finishing them. So we're going to put that outside of that. I believe it's the same level as that one. So here, and that's all within that is stock. So we need to continue on. We need to continue on that one. That's all still in stock. That takes us to here. Now, this next section, I'm going to take that much, and it goes down to there. Okay, so I'm going to cut that out of there, put it here. We're going to close that tag because we got another tag. Close that. Okay, and this one is the other ending of that. And now the only other part I need, okay, so now I'm going to have, based on that, I'm going to have another results equal WalkTheWeb iframe query. And then for each results as row. And for each one of those, I need to put this. and put that right here. Okay, so I'm setting some values under those circumstances. And now I don't need anything else from this section down to there. That still has stock, I believe. This one, yes, that goes all the way to there. Okay, so I didn't ruin my layering here. So, okay, so wait a minute. I just deleted that and didn't look at what the get upload object animation. I need to get upload object animation. So get upload object animation, it's this one, store procedure. We're going to grab the code, the SQL statement, and we're going to put that right here. Okay, now that we have that in place, okay, we're passing the object animation ID. And then we're going to grab our user ID like we did the last time, just copy and paste it. Keeping the validation in one place is definitely worthwhile, because then if I need to enhance security, change the security model or anything, we don't have to change any code other than when I set that value. And I'll know that if it gets to that value, it's because it was set. So now I don't need any of this code, and I can cut it back to there, so I know that's where I had it. And if I take these out, it extends the stock, because I did the stock here, if stock. This one now should go all the way, nope, that goes to there. Let me undo that and undo this part. Okay, so this one is, oh, that's why. Because this one is seeing if it has a user that's a valid user. So this page only shows up to valid users. This one up here is our stock, so if it's stock. So I need to put all of this stuff down here. We're going to take it from there to here. And we're going to place it right there. Now I'm in the right level. I put things where they need to be, and that takes me through where the stock tag ends, which is right there for me. And now I can remove both of, let's see, now I can remove that if statement because I've got the starting and closing tags for it. So then if I put this here like that, this gets the rest of that, and we're good to go. That converted that file. We've wrapped it into there. We brought the stored procedures into inline code. Now I want to see about changing these file names everywhere I've used this in the code. So let me find in files. I know I use it more than one place, but okay. So upload file. And I use it in object animations. I've only used it in 2 places overall. That's pretty darn good. I thought I was going to use it 100 times or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change those to a Z file reference to show that they're inside the files now. So I'll take each one of these. What I could do, if I copy that, each time I click this, I don't even have to click on the page. It'll highlight the piece that I've searched for, and all I have to do is paste. It automatically pastes it on the page. Good old Notepad++, gotta love it. Okay, so this one is upload ID, but where am I getting that upload ID on this page? That is object animations, connect. Upload object ID right there. Okay, so if I change it here and I change it here, upload object ID, now we've got it there. That's all it takes. And now we don't have any more references to those without the Z. Yay! Next one, we're going to do this one. going to do the same thing. I'm just making sure that if I use local variables within a page that they're labeled as such. In this particular case, the only place we have them are here. So I'm going to highlight this one. I'm going to change it to with a Z. I'm going to copy the word into my clipboard. You got sick. Oh, sorry, I hope you feel better. Okay. Yeah, I worked on this stuff till after midnight last night, till about 12:30 in the morning, so ended and started this day with coding, and I'm probably going to do the same thing again tomorrow, or tonight again. But making great progress, so getting closer and closer to getting the code up to date, finishing it all out. Okay, copy and find that one, find in files. This one probably has more references. That's what I thought. Okay, so let's see, first of all, this file. So I want to go in here, change it to Z object folder. So it's a local variable. Change it there, change it there, change it there, change it there, there. Just making sure I get all of them. Okay, and that took care of that page. What other pages still has it? WTW files. Okay, we're going to change it there because that's a local variable also. That's pretty much what I'm double checking, is I'm just making sure I'm running local variables. And of course, the more consistent you are on your code, the easier it is to make sure you don't make mistakes. So the more I do this, the better off we are. Okay, so action zones, that's not the page I was working on. I was working on this page. So object files, the next one. Copy find in files. And there's a couple references to it. And notice I'm only changing this on PHP. That is a default. So that's why I grabbed the $sign with it, because then I don't end up grabbing more than I need. Okay, object file there. We also had it on this page. Yep. And there. Okay, so that takes care of that one. The next one is stock. Find in files. It's all in this file. Yay! At least it doesn't go off on other pages. So Z stock. That's what we're going to change it to. And here, and there. And now file URL. Copy find files. There's a couple references to this, but we're going to fix those. And uploaded file only has it one place, which means I'm not using it once I read it in. It's not using it in this page because it would have showed up someplace else. Okay, file URL here. We're going to change that to Z file URL. Copy that, and here's where we set it. See, this one I set it and used it. Content session, media, okay. So then this one, we're not even using it. I'm not going to leave it there. This one, file URL, and we set it here. So I've used all those ones, no problem. Come back here. File path, this is the last of them. Copy find in files. Okay, this file gets used a lot more, and I'm going to do it in this file also because I'm heading there next, and so that'll just be one less one that I have to do when I go there. Copy that, copy that. Okay, copy there, there. There's a lot of file paths in that one. Okay, and that's all of those. And uploaded file, I don't use that one either. It's only one instance in that whole file. So that's not the page I'm doing the uploads on then. Okay, which means I'm doing it on this other page. Okay, that takes care of all those. And now this one. Okay, file path 1. Do I really want to change all these? File path 2. I can do that to all of them, not a problem. Yes, because I'll update them in that part too, and those all have Z's already. So yes, that'll be consistency. Let's do it. Try to find consistency everywhere I go. So changing these names. Here, 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 there. Okay, another word of caution when you do something like this, work from bottom up if you're using Notepad++, because when you change one and it adds a letter, all of the rest of your results are going to be one character off. Then if you do the next one, now you're 2 characters off. Then you do the next 3 and so on. So if you do them from bottom to top, then every one of them will be in the right place. So it must have some index that it uses for the actual character position as it's doing them. Okay, here's one here, and the one that the name that it brings in. Oh, we're going to do this too while we're here. We're going to go Z upload folder and Z upload there. Now we got those 2. Now that file's pretty much done. Okay, so we've gone through each one of those. We've labeled each one of them. We got rid of a couple of variables that turned out they weren't even in use. I have some more variables here used inside. They're pretty enclosed in where they are. I'm not going to do those just yet. I'll get back to that. I don't want to sit here and just pick at putting one extra letter in a bunch of code that may already work. I'll do it later on when I'm offset. Okay, so this one. So we've done uploaded file. Now it's time to do uploaded files. Convert this page. Let me close off some of these other pages just because. Uploaded file. Okay, I didn't want to have too many things open at once and miss something here. The first start process, I wrap this in a try catch. We call it upload files with an S. We're going to put this part at the top so we can run so we can track it with our pages. We also don't need that. I'm going to double check and see. I think we're going to check and see if we're actually using those. I don't think we are, but I'll double check before we get rid of those. In fact, might as well find out right now. Finding not in files. I know there's a million of them in files. I want to know, does it go beyond here? Nope, it doesn't. Find, that one doesn't go beyond there. Find, that one doesn't go beyond there. Okay, so knowing that, I don't need any of that code. The include is now in the top. The file functionality is fine. I get rid of that. Since we just did this, I'm not going to type it again. We will. Oh, guess it wasn't right there where I thought it was. Okay, let me just grab one of these. Copy that. And we're doing item again, so we want to put the item here. Oops, don't want to there. Okay, so what do we have? Is there a request method post? Do I need any other functions? Yes, uploaded object to there. So we're going to need the one that I just deleted. I'm going to cheat. We're going to take that like that, copy it, and I'm going to back up a couple steps here because I just deleted something. Okay, so now I'm going to kill off this stuff up to there because we are using the file one, and I'm going to take that line, paste it back there. Okay, so now we have this require once for files. We're going to put that in the server post part, and it's not global WalkTheWeb, it's global WTW files, which is the same as the file name right there, so we can see it at any time. And this one we're going to put get random string. We're going to fix that while we see it. iframe. See, I still keep typing it as iframes. I got to fix that. We'll do that one next after I get to the bottom of these, because I'm probably going to mess up 3 or 4 more times. Okay, that takes care of that. Tells it where it's running, because notice it's running from WTW files. We've included it. We told it to call the class, and we told it to do that. When it goes in here, it pretty much is going to get to here. I could, since the only place that's being used is there, I can actually move these 2 pieces. Unless I need them for something else, I can move them right here. Then only when it gets that far in the code, then it'll load up the other file, the class file, and then use it. So there's no reason to have it showing the whole time when you're only going to use it if it gets to that one point. Okay, let's see, where are we now? Okay, so we've got that one, we've got that. The next thing is this section here. First of all, this is another one of those where I do want to wrap it with if the user's logged in. Since we already did that once, there's no reason to type it all over again. We're going to grab it right here. Okay, so we're going to do that. Okay, so we're doing get upload objects. Over to our database, get the stored procedure, get upload objects, which is this one, alter the stored procedure. Rest of this code has to do with making sure it's a valid user ID, and we're doing that elsewhere, so we don't have to repeat that. And from here, okay, and once again, this is our valid user ID, so we're going to use that in here. And so that'll be the user ID where we're going to pull these values. And now for each, starting to see a pattern here, huh? Doing a lot of the same thing over and over again. Pulling my results, calling my queries, telling it to cycle through the queries, looking at where I wrote them out before with the stored procedures, and pull the code that it did based on whatever the results that it found. So we're going to tell that to go right there. Okay, and that takes care of that block of code to there. So there's nothing else there. There's no, what I'm looking for when I glance at it real quick is to make sure that there's no echoing to the screen where I'm just manually dropping code around that function or something. So I just want to make sure it grabs everything it needs. So this one's actually using the user, grabbing the uploaded objects, and that's another thing I did. See, I didn't do it here either. Whenever I work with these different files, I need to make sure that let's open table dash real quick. Like I said, I like to copy and paste, so I'm getting the table prefix. I have to set the table prefix so that it knows what table to go to with the naming scheme of whatever ones they use. So here, case from there. Order by that. Okay, we're good to go on that one. And here's another one from there to that. When I'm all done with this stuff, then I'm going to go through and do search replace, look for the word from, and just let it bring back the results and see how many of them I missed. I can also check for things like insert into and deleted and update, and just see what I can come up with for the number of instances that does it, that I may have missed doing that on the table. Okay, so that brings back that page is done, and I think I have one more left, users. Yep, I haven't done this one yet. Okay, one page left to go. So take this top stuff, copy that in here, and we're using users. We're going to close out the catch statement, the try catch. Now drop that in here. Okay. Next, notice these are all the functions, but I have not brought in the class. The class is users, but there's actually two classes we use. Some of these are on users and some are on login. So we're going to load both of those classes after you post back, not before. And then I'm going to say global WalkTheWeb users. Okay, some of the functionality is users, some of it's login. I may roll those into one, and chances are I'm going to. One has to do with the user data, like if I want to find out the person's display name that they used on my site. If they have avatar functions, I do those in a different file. But user information, like let's say I need to find out their email real quick or something, but then all the login process I keep in one place also. Because there's times when I need to call the user stuff and I don't necessarily need all the login functions. So by separating the two, I'm not overdoing how much of it I need at any one time. Okay, so now what I need to do on these functions is I need to see which ones are coming from where. So in this case, it already says W2W login, but I'm gonna, just to do it, I'm gonna bring up the function. Notice that it is in the login page, and that's why that one has the login preference to it. The other part is for consistency. That seems to be the only place that I've used login attempt. I'm going to go to the other naming. Notice all my functions have no underscore in them, so I don't see any reason to leave an underscore there. And we're going to get rid of the underscore here. Actually, that's logout. That's not even the same. Hit logout. Helps if it's named after the same function that it sits in. Hence why I found two of them instead of just one. Login attempt, and that one is the actual login attempt. Okay, and this function, we're going to take out the underscore. Like I said, consistency in naming. Anytime I find something that isn't, I definitely fix it. Okay, add user permission. Add user permission is found in the user class, so that's not the login class. We're going to call that users. And those are three different ones right here based on if they're building community or thing. Then we have delete user permission. I'm almost guessing that's going to be in the same class. We'll double check though. It's in users class. Get user permission. Sounds like a user class to me. Yep. Okay. Get avatar session. Find in files. And this one altogether, it's in avatars. I'm probably gonna move that one. So let me come back to that in a minute. Get user session, find in files. Okay, those two are both in avatars. They're both avatar functions even. So I don't see any reason to leave them in this file. So I have to track through the code. I have to get those different pieces, and I'm going to actually pull them out of here. So at the moment, this one and this one are going to fail if I try pulling those off from this particular page. But not only do I have to move it, I have to make sure t-instance and everything gets written to the right place when I go to call that function from my other code. So I'm going to do some backtracking and find out where they are. I also have some other login information there. I'm going to have to make sure that each one of those things travel with the proper functions. Make sure that the button set, anything that calls that button, goes to the right place. Nothing that's impossible, just need to isolate that out as one option. And then remove whatever isn't needed on this page would be the ideal solution. Okay, so I've gone through each one of the users. I've gone through the login. Oh, we do have a little bit more cleanup up here. So let's get rid of this. Let's find out if this is even using the community. Oh, it does use it. It uses it down here, and it's loading it on the page. Okay, so we are using building community thing, but notice I'm bringing them up twice. Okay, that's interesting. I'm setting them to 0 after I read in the session variable, which means I was not using it from there. When I call this page users, see, this is how I track it down. When I call this page, and that's the iframe users, so I'm going to say iframes users, find in files. When I bring up this page, I want to know, okay, that's where the page exists. Here's where I'm tracking the page view, and that's where it comes up. Okay, so I'm not setting extra properties on here. I'm not telling it to call this page. I'm not telling it to change this page at any point in time. So when it comes to the user page, I'm not bringing in variables. So if I'm not bringing in variables, there's no need for this section because I'm not reading them in anyway. And I don't need the WalkTheWeb database class. So that limits down to these are the variables I'm using on this page. And now I can fix a few of these, and in the reference that I did, like thing ID, avatar ID, permissions, all these different ones, I can change it to the Z reference. But as for it working, these are already working. It'll go, and this page will work. Okay, so I'm going to save that for another time. I've still got to take a couple of these functions out of here first. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for coming and joining me today, and thank you for sticking around. I'll be back on again tomorrow, and just watch for it and follow me if you haven't already, and that'll make sure you can find me. I'll probably log on a little bit earlier tomorrow, so catch you before noon. And depends how late I'm up tonight working on the code. So I made it through the iframe section today, and we're going to be working on, we'll be cleaning up the rest of the code and actually firing it off and using the code starting tomorrow. So we should be able to start loading up the code and watching it work and start creating some objects and testing out some things. Okay, so I hope you have a great day, the rest of your day, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you for tuning in.